here we go as we are going to be getting into game number 1. I believe tonight is ESL Masters Asia. I don't know when the first day of Americas is. It's going to be at some point this week, though. I do know that. And both Trigger and Vindicta are in the same group. But here we go, spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of Altitude. We have the Canadian Protoss player representing Team Basilisk. It is Trigger. Already up 1-0 in the specified grand finals, and spawning in the top right-hand corner of Altitude, we have his opponent. We have the American Terran representing Platinum Heroes. It is Vindicta. I see in the chat. I'm from Finland. Cyril is from Finland. They're also on Team Basilisk. I have to cheer for Trigger. That's some good logic. I can respect that. I can respect that. Again, as you were saying, Trigger is supported by a pretty big team here, and we've been seeing a lot from Trigger recently in World Team League. Team Basilisk have been doing pretty well for themselves with their pretty high stakes team in Trigger, in Cyril and Rainer as well. So it's great to see that they're a little bit more active. Also, shout out to Trigger. He was actually in the chat earlier. The stream did just go down, so it's possible that Trigger did leave us for that, but he was in the chat earlier watching some of his games. Shout out to him. Oh, shout out to the tournament, to the Tenacious Turtle Tussle. Let's go, Bobby. Let's go. As we are going for a Rax expand, and it does make sense. We are loading into Altitude, the largest map in the map pool, so it makes sense to go for something a little bit more economic, something a little bit less aggressive. And we're not just getting a Rax expand, we are getting a reactor first as well. So Vindicta, he doesn't give a damn about SCV scouting or Reaper scouting. Doesn't care at all. There we go. We do see a bit of a delay on that CC, but only for a couple of seconds, as Vindicta is forced to pull an extra SCV to eventually get this up and running. We're getting a pretty greedy opener here by Vindicta, but again, honestly really well read just because of the map. There is a chance that, of course, Trigger would like proxy him or be hyper aggressive, but the chances are quite low. Trigger isn't necessarily the most aggressive Protoss player out there, especially amongst the NA Protosses. I think Estrella hasn't beaten out on that. Estrella more than willing to be cheesy in the series. Trigger a little bit less so. And here we go. Behind this, we are going to be going for a gate expand into a Twilight Council opener. Interesting choice here. You would think that in a larger map like Altitude, on a larger map like Altitude, you would think that Trigger would go, or the Protoss player would go for a Stargate opener, take advantage of how large this is, make use of their Phoenixes and poke away and chip away at the army. Meanwhile, oh my god! Vindicta taking a page out of Spirit's book. Going for a Rax expand into a reactor first, into a third CC. This is as greedy as you can be. My god. Papi. All right. Into our second Rax as well. Meanwhile, looking at the vision here of Trigger, he is not able to get eyes on this, is denied entry into the main, and doesn't quite see what the follow-up is going to be. Once again, it doesn't make it in. Nice lifts there on those depots by Vindicta. Meanwhile, across the map, he doesn't come in with his 2 Reapers. He's looking to deal some damage. Does get 1-2 probes for his troubles, and not just probes, but he should also be able to get a full scout in the main. Hasn't seen the tech yet, but he should be headed in that direction. And there we go. Vindicta does indeed make it all the way into the main base and does spot that Twilight Council. Does see it researching, is aware of the blink. Meanwhile, we've been casting a lot of Trigger today already, and we have been seeing some 2-gate expands here from him. What I mean by that is we've been seeing some relatively fast third Nexi, less kind of aggressive play overall. We'll see if he continues that, as he did that every single game against Azure. A variation in a way. As there we go, there is that third Nexus being thrown down. So this isn't your typical like 3-gate or 4-gate blink aggression. This is only 2 gateways just for a little bit of map presence. We can't really reinforce. We don't really have too much of an army. It is, again, a lot more economic. So both players just being greedy. Just, I guess, Vindicta trumping him a little bit in that greed. things settle down here on altitude. Behind this, we are getting into a 3-rack, so Vindicta is going to be banking up quite a lot of Marines and quite a lot of Marauders. It is imperative that Trigger gets an eye on this to figure out what exactly he's up against, what he should be preparing for, what he should be worried about. Already, having these Stalkers across the map will benefit him. He'll be able to slow down any kind of ground push. Because this is a 3-racks, like we're not having medevacs, we're not having a drop, the army is going to walk across the map, and it is going to walk in the path of Trigger. Trigger with Blink is going to be able to chip away, poke away, and eventually slim down this army, so that by the time it gets across the map, it's going to be that much weaker. Meanwhile, Trigger just doubling down here, throwing down his Bay, his Forge, and his 2 gateways, getting into a more robust production. Soon to be getting into Colossi as well. Meanwhile, Trigger pokes in and gets a couple of SCVs. 2 SCVs do go down. I believe the Marauder count wasn't quite spotted yet, but the Observer does dip in, does see the army, now is aware, or should be aware, of the 3-racks. He even sees the Marine Marauder here at the natural as well. And Trigger should be fine, to be honest, as long as he's able to get Colossi out. The first Colossus is already on the way. By the time this army does move out across the map, we should be seeing 2 Colossus. With the support of shield batteries with overcharge, we should be okay. As Vindicta is going to be looking to expand and take his 3rd base. We've got additional Raxes, plus 1 attack on the way as well. Yeah, here we go. Again, this wasn't your traditional 3-racks because of the faster 3rd CC. It's more of a macro, like passive 3-racks. It's so weird. it's such an interesting way to open up here. As Vindicta, I love it. He's setting up a bit of a surround. He forces the blink, but Trigger does blink over to the right-hand side. Does inadvertently avoid the Marines and Marauders of Vindicta. But with that sim, it looks like isn't going to be able to catch up. I loved the setup there by Vindicta, but wasn't able to capitalize. Trigger's movement just a little bit too good. Meanwhile, we get the double scan, trying to get an eye on the 3rd base. Does spot the saturation, does miss the Colossi though. Looking at the vision here of Vindicta, hasn't quite seen the tech in the main. Should be aware though. And interestingly enough, he's just going to be going for that sensor tower. And this is another kind of benefit here of these 3-racks builds, is that even though you do have a lot of pushing power with them, if you are conservative with your army, then you're just going to have so much here for a bit of a later timing. So many Marines and Marauders to work with. You have to be very careful because every stim will hurt you until you get your medevacs, and the medevacs are finally arriving. But you do have to be very careful here with your movement and how you trade early on. As we see another scan, this scan will confirm the Colossi back at home. He's aware that the army is at home at least, and is somewhat aware of the composition. Speaking of, a 2nd Robo is on the way for the double Colossus production. Eventually we can get into Disruptors as well. And Vindicta, he's just chilling back at home. We've got a Ghost Academy on the way. Still have our 5-rack set up as well. Yeah, relatively defensive overall. It's pretty interesting because I feel like for a while, there was a lot of pressure on Terran players to be the active players, to be, all over the map and to try and slow down the Protoss, but Vindicta's going for a bit of a different approach here. I respect that. Especially because historically Vindicta, he hasn't had the most success in TVP. I know he's been looking to reinvent himself a little bit. He's been trying not to smooch, Bobby. Trying not to smooch. But unfortunately, because of this, like, he's moving out now. We already have 3 Colossi. We've got Archons on the way. We don't have Storm, but again, plenty of splash damage. No shield batteries though at the 4th base, so Trigger doesn't have the best defensive setup. Oh my god. We do land the tanks on top of the Zealots of all things. The tanks are going to be going down immediately. At the same time, Colossi are pushing on forward. EMPs are looking pretty good on the Stalkers. But the Archons come in from the side. Zealots coming into support as well, and it looks like we have too much Protoss. Up! The Vikings! They're gonna just barely get the Colossus. But it's too little too late. The Marine army did crumble. very unfortunate positioning by those tanks. Again, like, I understand that Vindicta, he wanted to siege up here to be in range of the rest of the base of the army, but he happened to siege up just as the Zealots were coming in. If it wasn't for that, the fight could have gone Vindicta's way. Like, it was pretty close, all things considered. With the help of 2 tanks, it would have made the world of difference. But alas, it was not meant to be. Trigger was just a little bit too active, a little bit too on top of things. Did shut down that push, and now I feel like Vindicta's in a bit of a rough place. Like, everything has been building up towards that one push from the beginning, and for his army to be reset in such a manner, and for Trigger not to lose any of his economy, it can be worrying. The other thing, though, is that because of the faster 3rd CC, it's something we don't see too often in this matchup, but Vindicta, the Terran player, is actually on par with the worker count of Trigger. It's crazy. It's actually insane. He's not that far behind in the workers, which is always a better thing for the Terran because of mules. So Vindicta's economy is looking pretty damn good. Again, I feel like his overall build and how he opened up this game is very akin to Altitude. I don't think we'll be seeing it on another map. Regardless, Vindicta is going to be able to rebuild, remax, already taking up towards his Liberators. I believe no Fusion Core yet, though, so we don't have Lib range, but Liberators nonetheless. And because he reset the Colossus count, it's going to take a little bit here for Trigger to rebuild and have a solid enough army to actually be active on the map. Got a couple of Colossi, we're getting into Disruptor production. DTs are on the way with that Dark Shrine. Here we go. Despite that, Trigger being quite active, catching some of these Marines out on the map. Can't quite commit up into those tanks though. Committee. Oh my god. As Vindicta is going to be going for a drop here on the right-hand side, and meanwhile the main army of Trigger is threatening that 4th. Thinks better of pushing up the ramp though. As we do see another drop being sent out here by Vindicta. And we'll see if he can find a way in. Again, Vindicta has seen all this movement because of the sensor towers, but he hasn't been able to reposition in time. Oh, the tanks are caught unsieged. Novas are going to be going off, detonating on some of those Zealots, but regardless, the tanks go down. The Novas, oh god. They do find their connections. Unfortunately, Vindicta did invest a lot of supply in going into these drops across the map, and he will lose his tanks once again. Doesn't have much to defend, is committing to these drops. Colossus. Colossus actually goes up into the main to lay siege upon the 3rd base. Okay, you don't see that too often. Colossus does go down. Maybe a missed rally, not too sure. As we do see a drop into the main. We do force a warp in back at home, but we have more than enough to defend. Oh, the drop is going to go down. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side, again, we also have an army here for Trigger as well. These drops not really doing enough. So we do see Trigger once again trying to push up the ramp, but, you know, this time the concave is just a little bit too good, especially through the center here. Trigger may have to reroute his army and look for another way in. Speaking of, does split off a force here, headed towards that 3rd base. Coming in from both angles even, and we do see Vindicta struggling to hold on to the right-hand side, struggling to hold on to the left-hand side. Once again, the tank count gets reset. The planetary is under threat as well. Vindicta, he has to respond, but he's so out of position. And despite Trigger not really breaking through, I do like that Trigger has been able to preserve his disruptor count. Not so much his Colossi, but definitely his disruptors. Has been able to preserve those high-tech units. Meanwhile, across the map, a little bit of Liberator harassing on the left-hand side. The drop coming in once again. Not too much, only 2 Marauders and a Marine, but, you know, damage is damage. And I do worry that Trigger is maybe overstaying his welcome here. Like, disruptors are good, but I feel like we don't really have enough here to support them. Has to be very careful as Vindicta is about to max out. Here, 200 supply. Nova's going to be going up. Does get a ghost. Only one though, as we have a much more committed drop here on the left hand side. We have an overcharge, but the overcharge isn't really supporting the army too much. Does force the pick up. As we can kind of see like how difficult it can be on a map like Altitude to defend your fringe bases. Like Trigger is kind of being spread thin, so is Vindicta. It's forcing these small armies to skirmish around the map, which is nice. As Vindicta is even going for his own upgrade as well. Medevac boost, let's go. Trigger looking to maybe try and surround this, but thinks better of it. Oh, can he catch these units? The Novas go off. Oh, and Vindicta is not looking. Oh, he takes a massive Nova to the face. Army's trying to reposition again. These disruptors are exposed. He does focus down 3 of them, but takes another Nova. And 1 is sometimes all you need. Vindicta with a lot of supply across the map. His army is plummeting here. And it looks like finally this third base is going to be broken. Vindicta commits to the push across the map, but we have an overcharge. We can defend. In the blink of an eye, in a couple of purification novas, just Vindicta, his army crumbles and he doesn't really have much left. Is going to be forcing a recall, but Trigger, he has his half of the map. He has plenty of room to work with. Is remaxing. Once again, more Nova's going to be going up. And these are costly trades here for Trigger, but Trigger can afford it. Vindicta cannot. As Vindicta has lost a base and a mineral line. Here we go. Reinforcements come on in. GG gets called, and Trigger will take game number 1. Ooh, GG. And I was really impressed with what Vindicta was able to get away with, and his macro as well. At a certain point, like, he was overcoming Trigger, especially when it came to his overall army size. But unfortunately, Vindicta wasn't quite setting up for a 5th base. Wasn't quite set up to defend his 3rd either, and things very quickly snowballed out of control. Oof, GG. And with that, I am going to need a moment, actually. Un momento. I think there's something that needs my attention. 1 moment. Oh. Okay, I'm back. I apologize for that. I was a little bit distracted mid-cast, a little bit distracted, but we can now focus on the game, thankfully. And yeah, that was a really interesting TVP. Honestly, really unique, to be honest. Keep saying that. It's really unique as well, just because of how greedy Vindicta was being. Likewise, so was Trigger, but for the Terran economy to keep up the way that it did is something you don't see too often, so really did appreciate it. But this does mean that Trigger is up 2-0 in this series. He did start the series off with a 1-0 advantage, and now he's going to be looking to clean it up here in game number 3. Let's go. And spawning in the bottom right hand corner of Babylon, we have the Canadian Protoss player representing Team Basilisk, currently up 2-0 in this best of 5 grand finals. It is Trigger. And spawning in the top left-hand corner of Babylon, we have his opponent. We have the American Terran player representing Platinum Heroes. It is Vindicta. Oh boy. And Vindicta is sending out multiple SCVs. Let's go, Poppy. Let's go. The SCVs are moving on out. Vindicta starting game 1 being hyper greedy, switching things up in game 2 being hyper aggressive. As we have our proxy racks being set up here, gas being taken back at home as well. And Trigger, for the time being, is none the wiser. He's going to be sending his probe across the map. Going to be trying to get some scouting information and get eyes on the fact that the Rax is, of course, not at home. Oh, and interesting. So this SCV is going to be coming in at a pretty interesting time here. We're only going to get a single proxy Rax, and we should be seeing... Oh, an Angie block as well. Okay. And it's going to take quite some time here for Trigger to get eyes on this. On top of it, Trigger is going to be forced to pull some boys to try and disrupt this and try to make sure that the NG Bay doesn't finish. But with this Reaper, Vindicta is going to actually get quite a lot of progress on this NG Bay. Oh, I mean, even without it. Here we go. We do see a Zealot being chronoed out here for Trigger. Gonna be looking to try and shut down this NG, but here we go. We have a bunker as well. Oh, do we have the RNG? Not quite. The SCV goes down. Oof. The bunker will not finish. A little bit unfortunate there by Vindicta. Is forced to cancel. Oh, I could see it all coming together. I could see the logic behind it. The Reaper comes in, the bunker finishes, and we are just containing Trigger to one base, but that is not meant to be. I mean, Trigger is going for his own shenanigans. The pylon across the map. It looks like Trigger wants to... I was going to say, it looks like Trigger wants to counter with his own proxy Stargate, but just like that. Ah. Migs taps out. He does tap out in the end. Maybe not happy with how his opener went, and that's it. Trigger takes the series. Not like this, papi. Not like this. Miguelito, por favor. I wasn't expecting that either. Oh my god. Not the first time that has happened today, to be fair. GG. Oh god. If only the bunker had finished. But even then, I don't know if that would have really helped either. Vindicta recognizing that a pylon was missing, that tech would be proxied elsewhere on the map, and yeah, not really feeling good about his chances. Wow, just like that. Bit of a shorter finals, to be fair, but congratulations. Just like that, congratulations to Trigger. He does take the series again because he came from the upper bracket. He already had a lead, so he just had to win 2 games. The first one was pretty intense. It was pretty intense, pretty chaotic, pretty back and forth. Game 1 was a solid TVP. Here in game 2, a little bit more of an abrupt ending. But regardless, congratulations to Trigger for winning it out, and shout out to Vindicta as well for making it to the finals, fighting back against Azure, and yeah, for making a show of it. Oh. And again, this isn't going to be the last time we see these 2 players face off. ESL Masters is right around the corner, and they are in the same group as well, so you know, they're going to be facing once again in a couple of days. Until then, GG, well played. Hope everyone in the chat enjoyed themselves. Again, I apologize for the stability of the stream. We did go down twice today, so I do apologize for that. It's a bit out of my hands, but the internet today has been a little bit shaky. Hopefully, it's not going to persist into the night, because tonight we have another cast. In 8 hours from now, we are going to be covering Kung Fu Cup. Kung Fu Cup week number 3, I believe. I'm going to be casting alongside Yaku of the Zaku. So if you're interested in following us there, if you're interested in some more StarCraft, then in 8 hours, we will return. Until then, all good for now, all good. We blame Al Gore for the internet. True, true. Smurge, puppy Smurge. Also, I didn't get to mention it earlier, but shout out to Kipsteer in the chat. Kipsteer87. Thank you so much for subscribing. That was actually in between game 2 and game 3. Thank you so much for subscribing. We appreciate the support. Torilla. Torilla, papi, torilla. Thank you so much. All the subscribers, all the money that we make here on Twitch does go towards our tournaments like this, like the Tenacious Turtle Tussle. This is a bi-weekly tournament that is region locked to players from North America, Latin America, and Asia as well. So yeah, we try to do what we can for the scene. And if you want to support us, !Patreon. Patreon in the chat. You can actually see it's right there on the bottom right. How much we currently make on Patreon and what our goals are. 300 USD would be enough to cover all of our tournaments for the month, as we do host 3 tournaments every 2 weeks. The Tenacious Turtle Tussle, Grand Platypus Open, and the Sparkling Tuna Cup. Our goal here for Patreon is to not just fund the events, but also hopefully turn them into weeklies as well. Right now, we don't really have the funds to make them weekly tournaments. We would love to, but we don't really have that at the moment. But if we do get support from the community, then we can make these a little bit more regular. And yeah, we would appreciate it. The players would appreciate it as well. So we do have that available if you're interested. Good casting. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. Do appreciate. I'll just put that in the chat. Also, when it comes to subscribing or supporting us on Patreon, you also get replay packs. The replay packs of this tournament, of every tournament that we have permission to share. We do give replay packs out to our subscribers and patrons. So again, if you're interested, you can get some benefits there as well. You also get a bit of a shout out in one of our other scenes as well. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for the support, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words. Gracias. As we are going to be done here for the morning. Again, a bit of a shorter broadcast. 3 hours, only 3 hours. We had a lot of really aggressive games. not a lot of late game. I think Trigger versus Vindicta game 1 was maybe the longest game that we've had so far. Everything else has been just hyper aggression all around, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, don't forget to follow as well. ! Socials in the chat. If you're enjoying our cast and if you want to tune into more, we have Twitter, Facebook, we have an Instagram. We do have a Discord server where you can interact with us outside of just the stream. And we also have a YouTube channel where we upload our VODs on a daily basis. So yeah, if you're interested, then there you go. We do have that available to you. And with that, thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We're going to give another streamer a bit of support, a bit of love. Who? We'll see. We'll check, Papi. We'll check. So stick around to share the love and give some support to another StarCraft streamer. Again, until then, thank you so much. We'll see you guys in 8 hours for some more StarCraft. Adios. Bye.